I think I was shaped by um, the history of, let's say, the last 70, 80 years, history of the Indian subcontinent, where there was British rule for 200 years. And of course, the British Empire pillaged and looted treasures from all parts of the world. And they used to say that the sun never sets in the British Empire. And they had uh, a, a strategy of divide and rule to make the minorities and the colonized people fight with each other. And they said that we will not only control your lands, we will rule your hearts and souls for generations to come. So there is colonial mentality, even after the British left, they were kicked out by Gandhi and Jinnah and Iqbal in 1947 after a long struggle. Uh, and so in 1947, when India's independence happened, it was partitioned into, later it became 5 countries: India, East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh, Pakistan, uh, Sri Lanka, and Kashmir, which is a disputed region. And that's where my mother's family was from, and they had to flee from there. It became Indian controlled. It became an Indian controlled state. And so my mother's family became refugees because they had to leave Jammu and Kashmir and move to Pakistan. So why I'm saying that is, Howard Zinn, famous historian, says that if you don't know your history, it's like you were born yesterday. And if you were born yesterday, you will believe anything. So there's history and there's legacy, and we are shaped by all of that. So to continue the story, my mother had 4 brothers. They all, one by one, moved to Iraq, and later, 2 of them settled there, had, got married and had children there, passed away there eventually. The 2 younger brothers ended up moving to Kuwait. My mom, when she got married, my father moved to Saudi Arabia back in 1951 and helped to build that country, like millions of other migrants and and workers from various parts of the world. So there, I lived for 5 years in Saudi Arabia and on and off, and I experienced, my family and I experienced a form of apartheid where there were different different groups of people. People were grouped also based on your passport. Your salary was based on which country you were from, and it was a very unfair system. When my father left, when he retired in 1986, after working 35 years for Aramco, which was the largest oil company in the world. When he left, he was the general manager of the housing department of the city of Dhahran, which is a company town. When he retired, he was replaced by 3 people. So he had been doing the job of 3 people and getting paid for less than one of them. Because of his passport, because he had a Pakistani passport. And of course, you could not get residency or citizenship. And that shaped me in that it made me very sensitive to racism and discrimination and injustice. I lived in Pakistan for 10 years, and of course, that shaped me greatly because it is also a very political environment. People are very politically active or politically conscious. And in the city where I grew up, which is Lahore, people were also very much into the arts and especially poetry. So over here, I don't know if I can point. Yeah, over here is Iqbal. Iqbal, if you want to know Iqbal, um, we can start with Rumi. Rumi is called the most popular poet in America since the last 15, 20 years. Why? Because his poetry books are sold more than any other poet. What's ironic is he was born in Afghanistan, and the so-called translators, who most of them don't even speak the Persian language, they made millions of dollars from these books, from selling these books. But these translators often would never mention that Rumi is Muslim. And that could have helped tremendously in building bridges, especially when there was wars going on, war under the guise of war on terror, the war in the American wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Syria and so many other places. So if you want to understand Iqbal, Iqbal is known as the reincarnation of Rumi, or he takes off where Rumi left off. Rumi is here. This is Rumi. So these are Rumi and Iqbal and many others. There's a long lineage of these masters and sages and teachers these were spiritual people who communicated philosophy and spirituality through poetry. So it is an oral tradition where people would often memorize very long poems and be able to recite them. So these people that you see in my background here have shaped and molded me. And here is Fela Kuti from Nigeria, a musician who talks about the many problems in Nigeria, and these problems are very similar to the challenges in a country like Pakistan. And then we have Zach De La Roca from Rage Against the Machine, awesome musician. Above him we have, of course, Che Guevara. And these people have done tremendous work in the field of social justice. And that is why, and these are my inspiration, these teachers, these sages are my inspiration to continue their work in some small way, to improve the lives of those who are voiceless or marginalized. And we have Colin Kaepernick, of course, very brave, heroic man, who one of the things he stands up against, I think, is super patriotism. And often a flag is waved to get people riled up and emotional, that war is patriotic, whereas dissent, I believe, is more patriotic. And it's a quote, it's an old quote. I forgot the person whose quote this is, but patriotism is the last refuge of scoundrels. This was a common phrase we heard about 20 years ago in the anti-war movement in Los Angeles and other places. And of course, we have Bob Marley. And under that is a little sign that says co-resist, with various various symbols of various religions. And on this side, we have imagine the song by John Lennon, of course, and he was killed like Malcolm X, like Martin Luther King Jr., countless others. And then we have one of my biggest American heroes, Muhammad Ali, who was a close friend of Malcolm X. And how he stood up to against the Vietnam War and sacrificed so much. So, these and countless other teachers and mentors, like Hamid Khan, who inspired me to go into the field of social work, because of the social justice aspects of this field. And I also got into this field to become a therapist, so I can do my part in helping people heal themselves, especially people who have been through various forms of trauma, including the trauma of war and racism and white supremacy and historical trauma and intergenerational trauma and so on. So that is why I got into this field of social work.